Welcome to the Smoke Break. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
I'm back.
And Taylor Barrett.
I accidentally punched myself in the face this morning.
Well done. Putting on shirts is hard.
It was a blanket. It got stuck on something. I think it was my girlfriend. I pulled too hard. My hand slipped and I punched myself in the eye.
Nice.
I thought I was going to have a black eye today.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
It hurt really bad. It still hurts.
I'm jealous of that story. And that actually ties us into our next topic. I don't know.
You are?
Jealous? Yeah. I wish I could
Or are
punch
you
myself.
admiring my storytelling capabilities?
Honestly. So jealousy. I feel like, oh yeah, damn it. Can we restart? Nope, we can't. We're sticking with it. We're gonna do a real quick disclaimer though. It's for entertainment purposes only. We work in the field of mental health, but don't claim to be professionals in the space. Our intention is to have conversations around lived experience, and as a result, we may not always agree with each other, but we do intend to hold space for conversations and learning. Here we go. Jealousy. I'm jealous of you guys not having to do that.
And I'm not jealous, but I admire you for it.
Do that.
Perfect, which ties into our next topic, jealousy.
Segues.
So,
Jealousy and admiration.
and admiration. I feel like, we were talking about them a little bit before and just kind of talking about the idea that, like, I feel like with jealousy and admiration, it's recognizing that, like, somebody has something that you look up to,
Or just want.
admire or want,
Yeah.
or, all those things. Jealousy is kind of like the effect of being like, but I think it should be mine, or
Yeah.
I should have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we talked about before the show was just kind of like jealousy and admiration are so close to each other, but they just have this like really distinct wall between them. And I think the conclusion we came to was that like the wall is entitlement.
Yeah.
If you're admiring somebody for something, that you don't feel entitled to what they have. But if you're jealous of somebody for something,
Yeah.
then that's where the sense of entitlement starts to start up. And you're like, I should have that. And whether or not you think they also should, you think you should have that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely.
I think that's like our ego like comes in and
For
messes
sure.
that up, right? Like it's like because jealousy probably is admiration before our ego steps in, or
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a time before that if our ego takes a minute.
No,
You
but it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's to first admire and be like, that's really cool. I like that. I think. And then the next step is.
Yeah, why don't I get that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wait a second, I want that.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. I think it's hard not to be jealous, but I think that a lot of times there's almost more reward in being happy for motherfuckers.
Mhm, mhm.
Like sometimes I see somebody who has something I want, and I'm like, I don't have that, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That is okay. That's cool that they have it. Like I think it really sucks and almost takes away from like them even being able to enjoy it if there's just a bunch of motherfuckers that are around just like, whoa, wait a minute.
Well, I also think that like diving into jealousy is a really good way to like ignore the things that you do have, because like
Yeah.
there's stuff that everybody has that somebody else is jealous of.
Sure.
And that
Absolutely.
can create like this loop of like this person's jealous of the next person B is jealous of person C, and then it's circles all the
Yeah,
way
have you
back
ever
around.
seen that like where that comic book?
Yeah, it's like 5 panels and everyone's like jealous of somebody else, and then it circles around like the last person ends up being jealous of the first person. They're like, wow, that's a great view or some shit, and like it's just
It's never ending.
yeah, it's never ending. And but there's like a while ago, so many episodes ago, we were talking about like finding contentment or like chasing contentment instead of like perfection.
Yeah.
And I think that like jealousy is a good way to like avoid contentment, because you're
Mhm.
constantly thinking you should have something else. You're constantly feeling entitled to something else instead of being
Yeah.
appreciative of the things that are in your immediate vicinity.
Totally. It takes away from being present. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally. I
Yeah.
also think that we live in a culture that like intentionally feeds jealousy because
Oh, on purpose,
because
yeah.
it keeps us as good consumers,
Yes.
and part of us being good consumers is us believing that we're like not good enough on our own, and that we
Yep.
have to like do all these things and buy all these things and achieve all these things. And so I think
Especially in like beauty products and
Oh,
clothing
yeah,
and shit.
totally,
Mhm.
yeah, women. I mean, I think everybody gets it bad, but I do think like, there's just this idea of like what like female bodies or what women's bodies are supposed to look like, and ever since I was really young, there was a lot of really intense like encouraging you to be jealous of other women, and often of like bodies that are not even like realistic, and then we found out later like weren't even real bodies.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
like a little kid's stomach put on, like
Like
weird.
Photoshop.
Photoshop
Yeah.
to hell and back, and like
Yeah.
some of the people modeling were like not doing good physically.
Yeah,
like-
there are a lot of people had eating disorders. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and I think that, like that idea of like us being consumers and like jealousy being this manufactured thing of like, you need to think that what they have is dope, so you also want it, work really hard to get it, and then
Mhm.
you can be as cool as them, and someone
Yep.
will see you and work really hard and spend more money on the thing we made.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a really, I don't know. I feel like it's a really gross like tool of control, you know,
Yeah.
because it's basically
It's in everything.
It's in everything because it separates you from, you know, like it separates community. It separates that person
Absolutely.
from being a part of your community and you from being a part of theirs because you both like.
Well, I think it ends up really relying on said community to circumvent that, which is shitty that like the corporations that are perpetuating these emotions and this like level of jealousy relies on the consumers themselves to not perpetuate that. Like it happens a lot in like video games or like card games and shit like that, but then the community within those games end up being very collaborative and like just bringing each other up, even though the corporations are trying to like oversell them and oversaturate that with like microtransactions and shit.
Well, and I think a lot like something that kind of brings up for me is just like the idea of like getting to the top and then almost like continuing to manufacture like that feeling of jealousy of just being like, I'm all the way up here. What are you doing down there? You know? And just like, kind of like it's celebrating it in a way that's just like, you should want to be here, you know, instead of being like, you should be happy that I'm here and you can also be here. It's like, look at me, I'm on top. Like you should feel bad that you're not.
Yeah, they put a crown on them and tell them to look down on everybody else. And I think that some of the best people in positions like that are ones that are encouraging to younger or newer people that are participating in whatever that avenue is. I think there's a lot of really good like professional soccer players, like professional athletes in general seem to have a surprising amount of like wholesomeness to them. Maybe that's because they have 1,000 cameras on them at all times.
Sure.
But there's like there's just a lot of athletes that I can think of that I'm just like, that's really dope that you're doing that. Like they'll give their jacket to like one of the kids in the stands wearing their jersey or some shit. But even then, it could be like, okay, well, did they just give the jacket to the kid because they were wearing the jersey and they bought this $150 jersey?
Yeah.
Well, that makes me think about like how like when you are in a position of being like a more, I don't know, public person or whatever, like having a public persona or whatever, like you do have to think about how the way that you like display that. Like, are you displaying it like, look, like you have to be exactly like me to be able, you know, like, like how much jealousy are you creating with your platform versus like creating or like spreading an idea that like there's all these unique and diverse ways to be successful or to be as full, you know, like someone might see a celebrity as like, oh, this person's self-actualized or in a way that like I might not never, right? Like then my life might just be boring and mundane, you know, but someone who sees their position like that and then knows how like understands that power and uses it for good to like not be like there's this one archetype of like what success or happiness looks like.
Yeah, no, I like that. I also think like I don't know. I've been like getting into philosophy and shit. This might just become a philosophy podcast, but like I've been getting into it, and something that they were talking about was like the golden mean, right? And that's basically just like the meme. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna post it later. But there's like a golden mean where it's basically like any type of virtue, like let's say selfishness, right? There's a too much and a too little, right? If you're not selfish enough, you never think about yourself. You always get taken advantage. If you always think about yourself, then like you're a selfish dickhead.
You don't have any community,
and you don't have any community.
Yeah.
So like that spot in the middle of like considering yourself and considering, you know, other people is like extremely important. So I wonder if there's something like that with like jealousy. You know, where it's just like a certain amount like drives you to want to be better because you see something that someone else has and know you could have it. But like too much is like, well, I shouldn't even work for it because it's just this thing that they have and fuck them for having it.
I mean, that could circle back to the comparison of like jealousy and admiration, you know, like if you're at a point in that golden mean where it is just admiration, then you can acknowledge that that's something worth working towards and that's something that you do have to work towards, but also appreciate the fact that you can see somebody else having that instead of thinking that you're entitled to it. But if the meter starts to fall into jealousy, then you, like you said, stop wanting to work for it, stop figuring out ways to earn it, stop figuring out ways to improve yourself, and just feel the sense of entitlement towards it.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, then it makes me think about like jealousy in the context of like, you know, like intimate relationships or interpersonal relationships and like how we can admire someone for who they are and not be like dependent. That's not dependent on how it affects us or like what we gain from it. But if we what was the word that we used? Entitlement. If we feel entitled, I don't know why that word keeps slipping out of my brain. If we feel entitled to someone like and what we appreciate about them, then it becomes about us and not about just like us just like having this appreciation for this person in our life.
Yeah,
and that gets really, really murky too because
tricky.
Like if you love someone so much that you value them that much and then it falls into like a demand and an entitlement of their attention, then it's like you're not loving them in a way that's healthy. And that will start to peel away your like accessibility to them. You know?
Totally. Or
And then you'll probably get more jealous because you have less accessibility.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh man.
Yeah. Well, and you're limiting them at the same time. You're like, I love you and I want you to be smaller so nobody else can see, so I'm the only one who gets to benefit from this amazing part of you, right?
I just want to put you in my pocket.
And you're shrinking them by doing that, really, right? Like,
well, I mean, there's definitely like those jealous partners that are just like, oh, you have to dress this certain way so other guys aren't looking at you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's like trying to make somebody small so that way they like are inside of like what you believe, that should be.
Yeah. Or even like friendship, like wanting your partner to like, have like kind of spend most of their time with you or being jealous when they're with their friends. I think like that's usually a kind of a red flag in like dating. If someone's like weird when you go hang out with your friends, versus someone who's like, yeah, go hang out with your friends. You know what I mean? Like that's usually
I'm sick of you being around the house. Go hang out.
No, but it's like a green flag when someone's like not weird about when you're out with your friends and they just let you, and they're not like, why didn't you text me every 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So I think
definitely.
it's tricky, but it's hard. We're humans and we have an ego and it gets in the way. And we do get sold this idea that like the way other people love us or show up for us is dependent on like our worth is dependent on that sometimes.
I think it kind of, as much as we probably said it, it kind of like fucking circles back to capitalism, where it's just like ownership is this idea that like it's not just cool to like be around something. It's not cool to like see something. It's like you have to fucking have that thing, and it's like that's where it becomes twisted is because it's not just enjoying a thing. It's not seeing a thing. It's like I have to have that.
Yeah, and I think it's like a lot less fun for everybody too. Like, and but here's the other thing I thought of too. Like I've been a jealous person lots of times in my life, and it doesn't feel good. Like I always feel yucky about it. There's no part of it that's like, now I feel better that I've decided that like this person is better than me, and I wish I was them, or like I'm mad that they have the thing that I want. Yeah. I always feel yucky afterwards. Like it doesn't. Make me
even
feel better.
during where I'm just like, I don't like that I'm doing this, but like I feel like I'm not practicing self-control to a point that I can't not feel this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's very strange and human feeling, but it's just it's uncomfortable while you're in it. It's guilty when you're out of it, and it's just like I don't know. It's hard to navigate, and then it's hard to like fix afterwards because you already like spouted all this jealousy. You already like put that all out into the world, and now you have to like peel that back, grow from it, and then hopefully repair anything that you damaged in the process of acting jealous.
Definitely.
And sometimes I've noticed I'm jealous when it's like something that I'm, for whatever reason, like not push, like I'm not motivating myself to do something that I know I want to do, and then seeing someone else be able to motivate themselves. Like I'll get jealous, and I'm like, that's really on you, Zoe. Like you couldn't, like I'll just whatever it is. Like I say, like I haven't been working out lately, and I'll see other people working out, and I'll be like annoyed, and I'm like, what is that about, weirdo?
I do the same shit. I'll see like a gym tips like TikTok or some shit, and I'm like, fuck you for being hot.
Totally.
And it's just a dude like trying to help other people. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I could take that advice and like go do the things he's saying to do, but I'm just mad at him for being hot. Fuck this guy.
Exactly.
Or motivated.
Hot and motivated. Being motivated is hot too. So fuck that guy twice.
Well, I mean, and I think that, like admiration is an important part of this because it's like, I think that just being able to look at something and enjoy it and to like it and to, just like have these, I don't know, to almost just let something be. Like that's what I feel like admiration is just looking at looking at a fucking sunrise and not being like, I should have that sunrise. It's looking at it and being like, that's fucking beautiful, and I hope somebody else is enjoying
my sunrise.
It's my fucking sunrise. Everyone better go to sleep, you fucking assholes.
Why do you gotta make it about you? It's like, why do we have to make it about us? Why can't we just be happy for other people?
Absolutely.
I get really jealous about like recognition too. Like if I see somebody getting recognized for doing something that I was also trying to do, even if they did it 10 times better than me, I'm just like, I want that motherfucker. Give me some of that.
Totally. No, that's fair. That's fair. Well, and I think that like a lot of the work we put into things, it's like we do want that recognition, and I think there's a certain amount of like when you put work into something, like you hope for something back, and I think that like an expectation to get something back is where shit starts getting twisted.
Absolutely.
A hope is fine. Hope is I hope you have a good day. I don't expect you to have a good day. That'd be a little fucking weird. That'd be a little fucking weird.
It's so weird.
You have a weird day. You have a good weird day.
I have a weird day. I am right now.
It's actually my expectation.
Have a good day, or you see him at the end of the day. You're also how'd it go?
How'd it go? Huh? Just checking back.
How was the day?
Report back now. I wanted a full essay, double-sided paper.
Your day wasn't good.
How it was.
You know what's gonna happen. Better have a good day.
I'm just smooch you on the forehead if you didn't have a good day.
All right. Well, we are going to take a real quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with a smoke break.
Just a break.
I'm going to have a real quick psychotic break and we'll be right back with the smoke break. And welcome back to the smoke break. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hello.
And Taylor Barrett.
Hola.
All right, here we go. So during this last section, we're going to talk about resiliency. Resiliency. I should stop taking deep breaths after stuff, but this one is fucking with me. Resiliency. It's something that I feel like is important to develop. It's something you develop over time, and I feel like often through experiences. Sometimes it takes really bad shit to be like, I can go through other bad shit. Unfortunately, we shouldn't have to go through bad shit.
Yeah.
And that's the part I'm not the biggest fan of.
Yeah.
Is that, something that my boss often says is that a lot of people have to be resilient in the face of things they shouldn't have to be.
Totally. Yeah.
And that resonates a lot with me. So yeah, what are we thinking about resiliency?
I think like people like to think of themselves as resilient, and I think we get more resilient over time. Sometimes though, but that's not true though. Some people get beaten down by life.
So fucking tired.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like, obviously would be ideal if everybody built the resiliency over time and that hard things got easier, but that's just not the case for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think even the people that do appear really resilient are maybe often really suffering a lot on the inside, and they've learned how to cope or mask in ways that help them look like they're doing okay.
You're handling this really well.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not handling it with my face.
Totally.
My brain is screaming. My face, nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think it's complicated, like kind of how you started talking about it. Yeah, I think it's like a good quality, but it's also can be used to maybe congratulate for people for things that we shouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think something that like really, like that almost brings up immediately for me is just like with racism, just like, oh my God, Black people were so resilient. Martin Luther King took so many bricks to the head. What a fucking hero. I'm like, what if you stopped throwing bricks?
Yeah, totally.
Hear me out. What if we didn't do that?
What if we didn't do that?
What if he didn't need to take bricks to the head?
Yeah, exactly. What if we judged him on being good at things with not that fucking barometer,
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like just like oftentimes, like with people in the queer community also is just like, they're like, oh, there's so much resiliency. There's so much, they're so resilient. It's like, they shouldn't have to be.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be measuring like their ability to be strong off of like the insults they're able to have hurled at
Absolutely.
them. You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think resiliency is an important thing. I also think, what you were saying earlier about like, that you can be resilient and also fucking be beat down, like how far does resiliency really go? Like, how far can it go? How far does it need to go? At what point are you just like, I don't want to be resilient anymore. I don't want to pretend like things that suck don't suck. Cause I feel like that's what resiliency is.
Well, yeah. And sometimes it can turn into like just not dealing with things because there's so many things that we have to become resilient, which means like compartmentalizing or like not dealing with things because we just have to keep surviving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a bad day can really, or just like a bad hour. You know what I mean? Like if you're dealing with some shit that you weren't particularly ready for, you got bad sleep, for whatever million possible reasons, that could really lower your capability to like be resilient.
Sure.
And like that, like to have to constantly be resilient is a unique form of like resilience in itself. To keep up that energy in the face of things that are testing your resiliency is absolutely exhausting. And like, how long can you do that before you're just like, I need a fucking day off from everything? Like,
yeah,
it's not fair to have to constantly use energy in that. And I feel like that's also why it becomes so exhausting, and why at a certain point some people just like tap out and they're just like, I need a fucking day or a week where I can just be mad or just be sad or whatever. And I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people shouldn't have to have the resiliency constantly tested.
Yeah, totally. No,
well, yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Sorry, I think that like resiliency is like it like what you were saying about like having to do it day in, day out, and just like how that gets exhausting, and it's just like,
even if you're good at it.
Even if you're good at it, even if you've made it, because it's like, I feel like there's days where like I feel more resilient, and then like there's days where I'm just like, I can fucking take on the world. You can say the worst thing about me, and I'll smile and wish you a nice day. There's days that I can do that. There's also days that like I'm so beaten down that like any resilience I had to deal with that situation is like I couldn't deal with something that was less than that, much less than that. So it's like, being resilient I feel like resiliency is like, I feel like it's a time period thing, like resiliency is like a good thing to have like for a period of time. But like, I feel like the resilience over like a long period of time leads to burnout, because like you're putting extra energy into something that like people are only putting a normal amount of energy in.
Yeah.
And I feel like you start to like really lose yourself in putting on all this armor, you know what I mean? And like carrying that around is exhausting. And like, you just end up burying yourself in this like in this mountain of armor to protect yourself from all these other things that are being thrown at you. And it's like at what point are you just this like shell of armor? And like nobody should have to be that. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that that's happening, and they just end up having all these guards up, like they're ready for anything, they're ready to be resilient for anything. But it's like you shouldn't have to constantly be ready for anything. You should be allowed to like experience your individuality without all this armor up.
Yeah.
It makes me think about like when I first learned about like equity versus equality, and did you guys see that? Like I probably
standing on
I was gonna say you probably saw it in a training or something. Yeah, and it's like three people trying to look over a fence, and like one person gets basically like what equity is like everybody having what they need to be able to do the same thing with the same amount of effort. I think it's kind of maybe like a way of thinking of it. And so if you think about it like resiliency in that context, it's like the people that have to be more resilient are the people who are to make up for the lack of equity, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's the toll that it's taking on them. Where someone else who doesn't have to have that, or doesn't like already has that privilege or that access, has so much more energy for other things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point. I think that it's trying to close the gap. It's like, because it's like, okay, for example, let's imagine, not that long ago that there was a racist diner and some black folks walked in and were like, I'm going to have dinner here. It's just like, well, they should only have to use the amount of energy that is to order and eat dinner. But instead they have to like sit in there. Everybody hates them. They're having slurs thrown at them. And it's just like,
they don't feel safe.
They don't feel safe. They feel in danger for any number of reasons. And it's just like the amount of extra effort just to eat a fucking meal is like insane, and it's like, they're called resilient because they sat through that, the black kids that went to school and were like harassed. They're called resilient for that just because like it took school, which is already hard, and then added literal insult
and danger
to like a situation that's it takes things that are already difficult, makes them more difficult.
Well, and the like the idea of like the more you go through, I think you mentioned this a second ago, like the more you go through, the more resilient you get. Like that is true to an extent, but there's also things like PTSD where like you having gone through something doesn't necessarily make you perfectly resilient to it. It doesn't, even if it's not perfect, doesn't make you like more resilient. It can hit you so hard that like you're losing regular sleep over it. You're reacting to other things as if that were happening. You're unable to like put yourself in safer scenarios and feel safe now because of things like PTSD and anxiety triggers, and just like it can take a really, really, really big toll on an individual that's had to be so resilient. And you going through something extreme doesn't immediately give you the equal amount of resilience. It can really fuck you up.
Yeah, there's not like a filter of just like, oh, I had this bad thing, it turned into this thing that I was strong for, and now I'm just strong for other big bad things. It's like sometimes it's just like this makes the next thing that much harder. And I feel like that's that with like a tough situation, it's like it's either resiliency or fucking trauma, and it's like, all right, well,
and it can be both,
and I definitely think it can be both, and it might look more like one in a moment than it does the other. It might look like resiliency when it is just like a trauma reaction.
Yeah, totally.
Especially like the shutdown response. Yeah, that looks like resiliency, but is a total trauma reaction.
Yeah, no, totally. I was thinking about like the idea of like someone who's like strong, like and stoic. Like, oh man, you just you don't let shit phase you. It's like because they are shut off, because they've been so potentially so much has happened that they're like, I'm not going to let myself feel as much because that keeps me safe. And then you're missing out on the range of experiences because in order to keep yourself safe, you have to shut yourself off to some of it, right? And
you gave yourself a really narrow window of emotions to feel, and now you can't feel either side of it very well. Yeah, and that looks cool when you would be presumed to be reacting poorly to something. It's like, wow, they're handling this really really well, but it's really disheartening when you see them not reacting positively to something that should be super fun, and they're just like, it could be good or bad. It's like, let it be fucking good.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even just like not reacting enough to a bad situation because you're shut down that much.
And that's
I guess I'm stoic at this point because I don't give a fuck.
I feel like I remember learning about like studies they did with like children and stuff, and like children that they stop responding to like upsetting stimuli because they're like, no one's gonna come help me, so there's no point in freaking out. I just have to go inside myself.
Damn, I hate that.
That's another example of how we might be like, look at that resilient kid, and it's like, no, they're so shut down because that's how they're coping.
They know that the world doesn't react to their pain.
Yeah.
So
they're experiencing depersonalization because of this.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the direction it can go if we don't think about like what we're really saying when we talk about resiliency. I mean, I do think there's some positive aspects to it. Like
Sure.
when I think of like the positive aspects of resiliency, or like how it could be framed as more of a it's more like in my personal resiliency, like as far as like I don't know, like something that like I thought was going to be really hard, but I wanted to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the more times I tried it, the more comfortable I got. Like even just stand up, for example,
Sure.
you know, like you get resilient to bombing, you know what I mean? And like, so in that sense, it's like, that's, you know, hopefully
That
not
is a
too
good-
traumatic.
Yeah. Not too traumatic, and like helps you get through to the next thing where you're like, well, either that wasn't a bomb or that bomb is something I've gotten through before.
Yeah. And it just helps you like not care as much what other people think of you. It helps you learn how to base your confidence off your own progress, or like competing with yourself from, you know, event to event, or a time that you're trying, whatever thing that you're doing that you're wanting to get better at, you know? So I think
There
I do
are
think
positives to resiliency.
totally. I think it can be positive, but I think when we talk about it in like a systemic way, we have, or like when we're talking about it in a bigger, grander context, I think you can't just talk about it and not acknowledge that it comes from.
Well, and I think that most people bring it up in a positive sense.
Totally.
And like, and I don't want to detract from the fact that like resiliency is important. In fact, I'm taking in a book right now that is all about resiliency, because I'm just like, how do you become more resilient? How do you not get fucking beaten down by the world? And it's got a lot of cool stuff, you know, and it's like, I think resiliency is an important trait, you know, to have. But at the same time, you know, I think recognizing when it becomes almost toxic positivity of just like, you should have to fucking tough through this. It'll make you stronger. And it's just like, or more traumatizing weird, you know?
Yeah. And then you can pass it on to other people too. It's like you not reacting in a way that would be beneficial or helpful for somebody else. And that's not necessarily like your responsibility, but it's like when you're that closed off, it sends signals to other people that make them question their responses to it. If they're responding appropriately to a really bad situation, but you're not, then it's like, okay, am I overreacting? Do I need to like shut myself down more? And I think that comes through a lot in like kids and parent situations where like I see it a lot when like something bad happens to a kid and the parents are like, you're okay. And it's like, you know that they're okay. They don't know that they're okay. So now they're questioning their reign.
They don't feel okay, but you're telling them they're okay.
Exactly.
So now they're very confused about how they even feel.
Yeah, and they're going to start questioning that really, really early. And that's like, I really go out of my way to try to not tell my daughter that she's okay when she's crying or something. Yeah. And like I'll ask her if she's okay. She's got this bad habit of like, even if she's crying or she's hurt, she's just like, I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna.
Yeah, but that's recognizing that like that people often, and even kids like often as well, will say like, I'm okay, to like, you know, avoid that. Like, I can tell that if I wasn't okay, that maybe you would be reacting differently.
Yeah, they're like managing your emotions in that moment.
And I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. Just tell me it hurts. Tell me where it hurts, and it's okay that it does. Like we'll get through this.
Yeah,
and not trying to diminish her experience of like. Of her
fear,
emotions,
pain, whatever.
Yeah, exactly, because it's totally reasonable.
It makes me think about like when a kid falls and they tell you like, don't react, because often like it's the opposite, where like a parent will go, oh my God, and then the kid's all, okay, I should cry.
Yeah.
You know, and and it's so hard to do. Like, and I'm not a parent, but I've been, you know, in care of lots of children, to just fall and then wait and see how they react and then match, like what you're talking about. Then you match them. But it's like either if you overreact, then they might overreact.
Right.
If you wait to see how what their genuine reaction is and then meet them there is probably much better, right? But by doing the opposite of no, chill out. If they are freaking out, if they are really upset, like, no, it's fine. Or vice versa. Like, oh my God, you must be so hurt. Are you okay? Come here. You know, like you see parents do that and then the kid just loses it.
I try to ask her too, so she can identify what's going on. And she can
like,
start to,
are you okay?
Yeah. And she can be more in touch with like I hurt my arm and it hurts in my arm and in my hand, instead of just being like, I'm hurting and this sucks. You're like,
it's all bad and that was surprising.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm trying to give her like the words to like work through exactly what it is that she's feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's tricky, but I think that's just being.
It's hard not to just react. It's hard not to just be like, fuck,
it's so hard to not go, oh my God, are you okay?
Yeah. You see a 3-year-old fall over and scrape her arm.
It's really hard not to. Yeah.
But I feel like kids are resilient, you know? I feel like they bounce back.
No,
they bounce back.
Kids are very physically resilient.
Yeah.
And like, especially really, really young kids, because a lot of their bones are like fucking cartilage.
Yeah.
Grow
back fine.
I did. I actually like got a sprain in my arm when I was a kid, and they called it a green stick fracture. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, basically just like your bones are bendy. So like it would have broken if you were an adult, but instead it just bent and fractured a little bit. And I was like, ew.
I don't like bendy bones as a
think of your bone as like.
Did you know your bones are always wet?
Okay. Well, that has been the smoke break. I've been uncomfortable. This has been Zoe Schwartz.
I've been awkward.
And Taylor Barrett.
I've made everybody uncomfortable.
He's been inappropriate.
Bye.
Well, I know the word. Did you know your bones are always